A few years ago, I was on a retreat in a Catholic retreat centre, and every day there was a service that I would go to. And one day the service kind of ended, but I was still feeling in the mood to pray more. So I kind of stayed there. And as the service finished, a guy next to me, who happened to be a Catholic priest, also on retreat, got up and left. At the end of the service, I stayed. And I thought to myself, "Ooh, I'm holier than him. He's getting up and leaving, and I'm staying here praying. I'm much more religious, much more holy than he is." I thought that thought. And then I caught that thought as soon as I thought that thought. And I caught it and I thought, oh my God, what an idiot am I? Like, what is that? Why am I thinking that thought? What a ridiculous thought to have, to be like driven by comparing myself or thinking myself holier than other people. Like, the retreat isn't working properly, or I'm not doing what I need to be doing if I'm constantly thinking about like comparing myself to someone else. And it just made me realize how strong that kind of thought process is. It's a really strong kind of thing within the mind that makes us have those kind of thoughts. Even when we think we're being super spiritual and we're feeling very enlightened, then that comes up and we realize we're not enlightened. We're not this like amazing being because this other thing is happening. What is this other thing that's happening? Jesus said, if you were going to burgle a house, if you're going to rob a house and there was a strong man inside the house, the first thing you'd have to do would be to tie up the strong man. Tie up the strong man. And I think this is what Jesus was talking about. This like thought process in our minds of, oh, I'm better than other people. That's the strong man. That's the strong man that we have to tie up to get to any kind of happiness, any kind of contentment, any kind of joy, any kind of enlightenment, any kind of deep spiritual peace. We have to tie up the strong man that is the voice in my head that goes, oh, look, I'm better than that other person. I'm better than that other person. It can also exist in other ways. It can also be in some ways the opposite. It can be, for example, somebody who is suffering, a victim of domestic abuse in an abusive relationship. And they might think to themselves, they might have the strongman voice in their head, oh, I'm not good enough, or I deserve this, or, you know, this is happening to me because it's my fault. That voice is also the voice of the strong man that needs to be tied up. Whether it's the voice that says I'm better than other people, or the voice that says I'm worse than other people, I don't deserve this. Either of those ways of speaking is the strong man that we have to tie up. We can't let that strong man voice in our heads be the voice that we listen to. We have to tie up the strong man. And it's the same thing, whether it's going, lifting up us when we put ourselves down, or putting ourselves down more humbly when we're, you know, making ourselves feel, you know, so much better than other people. It's really the same thing. It's really being liberated from that sense of comparison in whichever way it happens. The song of Mary, the mother of Jesus, talks about the God, the liberator, who lifts up those who are lowly and brings down the powerful. That's liberation, lifting up the lowly and pulling down the powerful. And these things, as I'm expressing the strong man as being inside the human mind, and it's also a defensive thing. It wants to defend itself. There's kind of a violence to it in holding that structure of feeling better or worse than other people. There's a kind of a structure to that that needs to be defended, that doesn't want to be broken down. It doesn't want to be broken down. It exists in the human mind, and it also exists not just in individuals, but in communities, in organizations, in nations, in international corporations. That is, the strong man exists as the voice in these organizations that are trying to defend themselves, that feel sort of holding their boundaries really strongly, that don't want to dissolve those boundaries, that live in a kind of a place of fear, anxiety, and aggression. Fear, anxiety, and aggression. What are we seeing going on in the world right now? The awful things we're seeing in the world, the genocide that's happening right now in Gaza, the unspeakable violence we're seeing. Where is it coming from? It's coming from Benjamin Netanyahu and the Likud party, because there's a voice of the strong man in that institution. There's a voice of the strong man in the Likud party that is going towards violence because of that place of anxiety. Equally, the COP conference happening now for climate change, oil company lobbyists outnumbering people from developing nations who are actually being affected by climate change. What's that? That's the strong man, the voice of the strong man that wants to control the status quo, that wants to keep that status quo of how things are, and doesn't want to be dissolved, which we have to dissolve this old world. We have to move to a new carbon-free world. But the carbon world is going to hold on tight, because the carbon world is a strong man as well. Tie up the strong man. That's the work of freedom. That's the work of justice. That's the work of liberation, the work of tying up the strong man. How do we tie up the strong man? There's all kinds of ways we're going to have to do that, and I don't have all the answers politically and economically. But the foundation for it is to also do it within ourselves, to tie up the strong man in ourselves. For that work of liberation that we want to see in the world is become also the liberation that we do for ourselves. And that's what spiritual practice is. That's what contemplation is. Spiritual practice is the practice that we do that enables us to be liberated, to tie up the strong man every day, to tie up the strong man of the voice that is the voice of fear and anxiety and comparison and holding on defensively to the status quo. Spiritual practice is that thing which ties up that voice of the strong man that is all of those things and leads us towards liberation. That liberation which is a dissolving of the strong man, dissolving of the ego, dissolving of institutions that are defensive and violent. Spiritual practice enables us to kind of apprehend reality as it really is, dissolving these illusions that exist in our mind, but also kind of exist in the way that we operate as whole institutions and nations and governments. Liberation is the work in the world and the work of spiritual practice to liberate ourselves from the strong man. To get to that place, we have to tie up the strong man.